Hello, my name is Juliane Saupe. I'm very happy that Mirella and Juliane invited me today to talk about Coopetition and money issues. I'm working at Kunsthalle as a production manager, so it's kind of, it's very nice to talk with you about these topics today. Just a small side note, Coopetition is a mix of competition and cooperation. So in German you would say Kooperationswettbewerb, just if you were not familiar with this word. But we will not just talk about money, but also maybe about sustainability, solidarity, and togetherness, or like modes of working together. And I'm very happy to introduce Vincenzo Della Corte, who is here today from Vin Vin Gallery, Laura Amann and Jen Kratochvil from Significant Other, here on my left-hand side, and Andrea Lütt from KLUCKYLAND. And just how we did it before, in the panel before, I would also ask you to introduce your space for some minutes, and maybe also talk about your desire. Why are you running this space? Or what is the motivation behind to wrap this up a little bit? And who wants to start? Would you like to start? Okay. Website? Perfect.
Okay. Hello. So about our space, maybe it's actually good to start with the name, Significant Other. And we chose it actually because it's a term, well, of course, most well known as a term to talk about your partner without specifying so much the nature of the relationship, but also it's actually used in psychology and sociology to determine a character or a person who is very significant to the development or your own personal development. So I think this is in a way for us has become kind of main strategy, and it refers to different kinds of things. First of all, our different backgrounds, which are in contemporary art but also in architecture, so that's one of the topics that we deal with at our space, and then the other one has to do more with geographies, and it's because we are based in Prague and in Vienna, so this is also one thing that is important for us, these two different backgrounds that we have. And then of course on a more general level it also refers to an attempt to work as a project space with other institutions to maybe allow for things that would otherwise not be possible.
I would maybe just add that talking about Significant Other as about a project space is a bit complicated, because it's actually not only this space which you can visit here in Vienna, but it's more of a curatorial platform, let's say. Because under this, let's call it a brand of Significant Other, we are creating other projects, as Laura said, in Prague, but also in other places. So our ambition is to consider this exhibition venue as one of the poles of different strategies, different approaches, approaches which could, in hopefully upcoming years, will evolve also into a publishing platform, and which is, besides exhibition making, also very strongly connected with discursive activities.
Yeah, and maybe just a short note on why we're doing it, or why we're doing it here in Vienna. I mean, it's maybe something that was actually also mentioned in the first panel. That is also our very subjective but strong impression that in Vienna there are many project spaces, but many of them operate around the academies or certain students and their environments, and so we see this is something that is quite well covered here, but there is a vast space in between those artist-run spaces and, let's say, the proper big institutions. So this, even though we also have a very small space, for those of you who know it, the ambition is to try to work on an international level and with a kind of curated program.
This is somehow coming exactly again from this more Eastern European experience, specifically in Prague, where the structure on the art scene is almost totally inverted, because the main formative element on a scene is actually the independent sector. And the main museum institutions were till recently very dormant in terms of international content, so somehow the situation in Vienna, this mirroring, is almost opposite. To those relationships in terms of significant other, we can maybe say just a few words about the upcoming program. The first series of shows is reflecting two of those relationships, the relationship between art and architecture, and also Austria and Czech Republic, or more specifically Viennese scene and Prague scene. We started with the first show of Josef Dabernik and Alexandra White and Jimena Mendoza, two people who are very closely connected with the Prague scene, with the institutional structure of the Art Academy, even though they are not originally from Prague, because to play with these nationalistic affiliations doesn't make much sense anymore, obviously. Upcoming show, as you can see, is Sonja Leimer with Klára Hosnedlová, and the last from this first cycle is Christoph Mayer with Ute Miller and Roman Štětina and Teresa Příhodová. The next year is much more strongly connected with things Laura was mentioning, with certain attempt to invite artists who would be in Vienna, rather presented probably in an institution as this one, but we are trying to somehow provide for them different platform, different possibility, different way of expression through this very complicated small space of ours. I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Would you like to go on, Andrea?
Okay, my name is Andrea Lüth. I'm talking here for KLUCKYLAND, or you could say KLUCKYLAND in English, or Kluczki in Czech if you want. So, I organize it with a partner, a colleague, but he is currently on a residence in Canada. So Gerhard Rosbacher and we organize the space since 2.5 years. It's located in Brigittenau in the 20th district. And I chose 2 photos because it's really important, I think, to see what the space is like, to understand why it works maybe differently. So it's a corner, and the corner window is from ceiling to bottom, like really to Gehsteigniveau. And the other 2 walls are just white walls. And what we do is, when there is a show, we leave the light on 24/7. So the show is then visible all the time. And we are both artists, so I would call it an artist-run space with, the good and maybe the more complicated things that brings that within. And it started like this. We had our studio in that street and saw the space, and there was this need for maybe an extended studio to do things you don't do somewhere else.
Okay, my name is Vincenzo Della Corte. I come from the classical music. I've been working 25 years as a violinist and orchestral conductor, and I came here in Vienna to study orchestral conducting. Then I finished my studies. I began the activity as an orchestral conductor and made my debut at Musikverein with the Radio Symphony Orchestra and blah blah blah. And then before, already simultaneously, but a bit before that, I began what I would define more than intense activity in the contemporary visual art system, which led me slowly, but very constantly to do many studio visits, hundreds of studio visits, to begin even a little dealership for other galleries, to organize in a very intimate and private form exhibitions, small exhibitions with friends, even in Italy, etc., because I come from Italy. And all this activity led to the foundation of Vin Vin 1.5 years ago, which is quite a peculiar space because of the size and the characteristic. It's a small space in a very central area, but small with a sweet courtyard, which allows to host people and to at least to be a little bit more comfortable. And the space has the gallery has quite an heterogeneous attitude and goal and focus. Emerging art is for sure, I always find difficult when people ask which is the focus of your project. It's simply, I would say, emerging art for sure, with an heterogeneous and intuitive attitude. I began after 1 year with the first art fair in Milano, MiArt. Then I kept going with Vienna Contemporary this September, simultaneously a small fair in Poland. So the process of art fairs has also begun. And let's say that what brought me to found Vin Vin was simply, I mean, I never really decided to do it. It was much more the evolution of what was already happening, an intense and very structured and very serious, etc., activity in the contemporary visual art world. So I told, okay, let's found a space. A very, very good friend of mine, which is present today, helped me in finding this space. In fact, he found the space actually, and we started with this. And I hope that the project will become more and more, how to say, will involve constantly more and more people, as already it happened from the beginning, from its foundation.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So when you said actually, Vincenzo, that things just happened and you found the space, I was just wondering, because there are different financial models possible, right? Like an off space or a non-commercial space. How did this happen? Like how did this then, became? How did Vin Vin became a gallery?
First of all, I would be very careful with such a, I mean, the gallery is the proper definition, although in this era of in this transitional era for everybody, not only for small entities, also for mid-sized entities, even for huge entities, in such a delicate, fluid, changeable era, I would be a bit careful with strong and fixed definitions. But let's proceed by defining Vin Vin a gallery. It started with the same intuitive approach I used concerning contents and the choices with artists, etc. I had a financial source, which is a person who lives in Italy, and around this financial source, which allowed me to take this decision, otherwise would have been not really possible, I'm creating slowly a nucleus of people, young people especially, who are quite intensively supporting me for this project simply by believing in Vin Vin, buying and making the context slowly and gradually brighter.
Okay. And Laura and Jen, the space is very new. I was just wondering, who supports your space, like also concerning money and how do you survive?
Well, I would say, yeah, we had our first exhibition now, and actually it is conceived as a cycle of 3 exhibitions. And for these 3 exhibitions, we got some support from the Cultural Ministry. So we're very grateful about that, but it also means, of course, that basically all the money goes into production costs. So everything else is, of course, unsalaried work, and it also means that you have to do, of course, as much as you can by yourself. And in terms of even, for example, the space, of course, it's only possible for us to use this space in the 7th district because we have also a shared co-working space attached to it, which of course makes it more affordable to pay the rent, etc. And for the next year, this is for sure going to be also a big topic or a bigger challenge because, of course, inviting people who are used to other conditions will mean that we will have to be much more active in this sense. And of course, but this is also something that we're used to, I think, from the curatorial side, to also look for grants from all kinds of different cultural funds, from embassies and cultural institutions from their respective context.
I mean, this is for us interesting also in terms of the curatorial practice, as Laura said, not to repeat all the time together that we are just perpetuating this precariousness of this kind of labor we are doing, but the way how we approached our artists for the next year, who are people really used for proper institutional conditions, was already informing them and somehow asking them if they would be willing to participate on this level, if they would be interested of somehow reshifting their position in terms of production and in terms of presentation of their works and to adapt it to a space as we have. And it feels that so far it works very well because the artists are kind of enthusiastic about the fact that they can somehow reevaluate the way how they usually work. So, I mean, working almost without money is in this moment somehow a certain intentional strategy.
And KLUCKYLAND, how do you survive?
Since so the 2.5 years now KLUCKYLAND has existed, we've been getting money from the Bundeskanzleramt twice a year, a so-called Projektförderung, and it covers the rent and nothing more. And still we did 28 shows in the last 2 or 2.5 years, so it means for us we do everything without money and for the artists as well. So the only thing we can offer is then when we invite somebody, they have absolute artistic freedom, so to say. And we support them with everything we can do. And the rest, things like transport or other things, we do that by the money we get from the bar at the opening evening. So this is our rather transparent money situation.
So did I, when I listen to you, I hear that you actually would like to pay artist fee, maybe yourself even a honorarium.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Sure.
And okay. I was just wondering when you said, Vincenzo, that we actually, you don't find it really useful to stick to these categories of, okay, artist run space, gallery, but what kind of new vocabulary would we need then, and what are actually also restrictions for that? Because when I read the Bundeskanzleramt Projektförderung guideline, I see that it should be a non-commercial space, right? And that you should not, to a certain attempt, sell things. So I'm just wondering how we could execute that in a way.
That's a very interesting question. Actually, I don't think that we don't need these definitions, and I think that we must somehow momentarily for the next years stick to these definitions. But we need to put ourselves in the condition to really, without apart of any philosophical attitude and approach, we need daily to investigate the meaning of these definitions and to really analyze which is our position in relation to these definitions, and if these definitions can be changed, modified, can be shaped in a new direction or in brighter directions. For example, we were discussing with a friend some days ago, and in the Anglo-Saxon, in England, for example, galleries are also, and especially the institutional space, no? So the term gallery is not only referred to the commercial gallery, but also to spaces which are in between, or which are hybrid, or which have several functions and goals. So I think that I ask myself daily if in this evolution of the structure and of the art system, and in this delicate phase, we can explore not new, because new models, it's such a deep and difficult theme, but different, slightly different structures, and therefore subsequently definitions. So I don't say we don't need definitions. I say to myself, okay, put yourself in the condition to not stick on. This comes from a very superficial episode. 3 years ago, I was talking to a person, and I was asking, okay, so you are a curator, you are still a curator. And he was like upset, and he told me, no, now I am a gallerist, now I open the gallery. And this really opened in my thinking a huge door, a portal. How restrictive can be the way we think, and subsequently the definitions we use. So in the beginning of my activity, they asked, what is it? Is it a gallery? Is it an office space? I told, okay, I didn't know what to answer, because I didn't do an art fair yet. I didn't have a list of artists, which I still don't have, because I'm building slowly it. I didn't have works in consignment. So the first month I told, I really didn't know what to answer. Then now what I answer, I say, okay, I do fairs. I relatively regularly sell, because you don't sell every day, of course. I'm building a list of artists. I have works in consignment. So if you want, say Vin Vin Gallery. I prefer Vin Vin.
Yeah. And now a question for you. What do you like? Because you said it's a project space, right? You would, and this keeps it kind of open, and that you also have in the future this plan to, go in between the institution and an off space, like that you see that there's a white space which is totally open. But I was wondering, yes, how do you, what potentiality you also see in this idea of a project space, and how you would like to sustain actually, like through this public funded money, or if you could also think about going, like searching for collectors, or even selling, or I don't.
Yeah, well, I think it's a question that probably all of the colleagues we have that recently founded a space or a gallery, and what Vincenzo was also talking about, I think this has become, to a certain extent, relatively fluid now. And I think maybe until some time ago, it was still very much frowned upon to be an independent space and to sell. It would have not been really, possible to do it. And nowadays, even if it's not maybe not the main aim, not the focus, and not a lot of energy goes into it. I think lots of people are at least open to it. And in our case, for example, we were not thinking about this option at all when we opened the space, but we were approached by some artists asking if we would be interested to do it. So I would answer the same, like it's not our main focus, it's not our task, but we would also not reject this in the sense that being independent, that this would actually also allow a certain independence, because being independent on the money of the cultural ministry is also kind of dependent, so yes.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the sustainability, the significant other is somehow not based on the idea of continuous exhibition making in this particular space. Like the platform is quite hybrid, let's say, and maybe after last year we will just really focus rather on publishing or some other activity. So I wouldn't necessarily think about some kind of need to find a proper financial system for exhibition making in a project space, but for different forms of activities.
And in KLUCKYLAND, you said that you actually had, what did you say, 28 exhibitions, so it's really, continuity in this exhibition making in a way, also what Bundeskanzleramt wants, right, that you always keep on doing and having opening hours. I was just wondering how you see the space in the future, and if you can actually stay in this mode of...
I can't really answer that. I think it's the second artist or off space I run, and energy levels go up and down, and I can never say how long things can go, money-wise and energy-wise. And what was the question?
Yeah, it was actually like you cannot really, the future's open, so it was never planned.
The thing is, if they say, like for the next Projektförderung, no, then I guess we would have to close it. That's just it. So that also makes programming a bit more interesting. Yeah.
But do you have the feeling that, since Vienna is compared to other European cities, or this is how I feel it is very rich on public fundings, and but there's every time, of course, this feeling of there's not enough money. Do you have the feeling then that you are in a competition with other spaces, or do you rather feel this, this urge for solidarity, cooperation, maybe even joint forces, building networks of solidarity, or what is your impression on that?
Yeah, it's difficult for me to answer because I can only talk for our art room. I don't feel competition strongly. I rather feel like cooperation. I mean, they're all sitting here now, so I guess a Veranstaltung like this here makes sense. So then everybody can, say. I guess everybody has similar issues with the money and like the off spaces, I guess, or maybe not. So that's why it would be interesting. Yeah.
What are issues?
But for example, for me, I didn't study in Vienna, and in the first space I co-founded and organized, it was a very important reason for us to sort of get to know Vienna, and that Vienna gets to know us. And in the second space now in KLUCKYLAND, it still is a similar issue. And then on the other hand, the place where it is in Brigittenau, in that corner, there is not so much art or fine art, and I think that is a really good thing to do it somewhere else, where other sort of groups of people can get in touch, which happens or not happens. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what could be ways of work together or join forces, like share knowledge, of course, how to do with money, but also even people could think about concept like share the rent of one space and then open 2 spaces in one. I don't know. I don't know if you have ideas or.
I've been talking to a colleague here. We said we could have a off-space Stammtisch. If there is interest, so we could think about it. I don't know. In where we are in Brigitte now, I know New York is somewhere here, and there is another space called Miss Balthasar. We did think of, like coordinating our opening times.
Could you talk a bit? Could you please talk a bit in the microphone?
In the microphone, yes. But then, in our case, or in my personal case, these things, these organizatorial things, they cost me immensely much energy. And I'd rather put that energy in the work, in the space with the artists. And so, yeah, like it's really very precarious, I think.
I mean, in this respect, we are coming back to the title of or name of our space, and again to this idea of certain new relationships and possibility of new structures in this environment. When we opened the space, we right away approached major institutions in town with a proposal for certain mutual collaborations. We were asking about existing models of collaboration between institutions. We were told that nothing like that is really present or almost possible. One institution tells you that the other one has completely different form of financing, different form of programming. Only positive answer we actually get from Kunsthalle, and here we can obviously see a certain attempt to cross-connect different platforms, but in this respect we would see significant other probably as a possible mediating point in between different platforms, institutional and independent, and we'll see how that gonna develop.
Yeah, and maybe just, I mean, we are in the very beginning of all these conversations, so of course we're not sure where it's going to lead, but so far the response was actually relatively open, and in our view I would say that this is just a very simple kind of shared economy, in a sense that maybe you will share, if you share some overlaps in your program, then you allow the artist who has a big show in an institution to do something more experimental at the smaller place, or that you can maybe use the infrastructures or facilities of a bigger space which has a screening room or cinema which you don't have, and things like this. And then maybe also on that note of cooperation or what we can do for each other. For example, in our case, since one of the topics is of course also this exchange with the Czech scene, we also want to, or we're proposing, for example, to our colleagues who are like in the same or similar situation of building up their own projects, to organize, for example, research trips, which we find, of course, there has been long history between exchange of the Czech and the Austrian scene, but we feel that in our generation somehow there is a certain distance or just very passive kind of interest. At the same time, it's very close and very convenient in many ways. So we're trying to organize research trips for young galleries so that they can have studio visits there and things that they would be maybe interested in but possibly would not do on their own initiative.
Yeah, Vincenzo, what is your plan for the future? And also maybe connected to that, how can I imagine are you working every day in the gallery and being yeah.
Being
Gallerist.
being a one person activity, yes, I do basically everything. In fact, I got some white hair in lately, but I do it with very much pleasure, and it's also easier in the very beginning to do it by yourself, to do almost everything, because it's a bit easier to have everything under control. I mean, it's an illusion because you will never have everything under control. There is something always ahead of you that waits, and it's undefined and uncontrolled. But yes, momentarily I'm not in the position to hire employers. I have every now and then some collaborators. Soon for art fairs I will also ask someone to help me, because it's needed to do it to go in different directions and not only in one direction, because one can be good in one thing but can be bad in other things. So I think it's a necessity to extend the activity to other people. Momentarily is not yet the moment, so possible, but will be. In terms of cooperation, I have the impression that every one of us is now finding or looking for. Yeah.
Could you talk?
Is now looking for a certain identity. We are all very young, like 1 year, 1 year and a half old, maximum 2 years. So I have the impression that there is a very positive intention. We already met and we already discussed some possibilities, but of course the subsequent step is very difficult to really structure something in terms of cooperation and to have effective cooperation. But I see very, very positive premises, at least with the other galleries I met. Yes.
But also connect a little bit to the panel before, because my colleague Juliane Bischoff asked if, you think your space could overlive, let's say, your own persona. Like if, for example, a significant other could somehow survive without you.
I think for now the baby is 3 months old.
Yeah, true. True.
So I think it's very much connected to us personally right now. But I mean, we don't know what's going to happen to it, and maybe at some day it could be somehow a sufficiently stable structure that it wouldn't depend on our personal involvement. I don't see why not. But
what would be needed for the stable structure? Like when you...
Well, probably, that's a difficult question in a sense also that we're not so much looking to represent just one stable thing per se, so already there lies maybe a contradiction, but I guess it has more to do with building, as was already mentioned in the first place, like that you do things with a certain signature and with a certain intention, with a certain style, with a certain content, and if this image maybe becomes strong enough, then it can also be executed by others, of course, and doesn't depend on personal involvement. And actually, possibly money issues are obviously also a question. If you manage to build up a structure that has kind of stable funding, then this is also something that allows others to step in and to continue the work somehow.
Yeah, I think there is nothing to add to this statement.
Now that my colleague is not here, I can say what I want, of course. I don't know, actually. I'm not sure. I would say rather yes, but I don't know. With the first off-space I organized, it was not possible. So when we separated, there was no way of a continuation. So I think it can be like this or like that. I don't know.
Yeah, this is my goal can happen maybe in 20 years or will not happen, but through my previous activity as an orchestral conductor, I realized I don't like all the responsibility on me. I don't like all the attention on me. So I really hope to build something that over the years could be extendable to other people and could even on the long term survive without my presence. But this is a really futuristic, for the moment I need to send myself the emails and print the press releases, etc. So we are still far from this moment.
Well, judging by Viennese gallery scene, you can do this till you are 8 years old almost, so
Exactly.
we have still some time for that.
Yeah, since we have a lot of panels also ahead of us, I would now suggest that if you have some questions, we could open up. And if not, then I would say very short break again, 5 minutes, and then my colleague will go on.